means there is a blindness of ideological reasons.
Yeah.
And one question I have,
Okay.
what do you think is the outcome of all this? Because the liquidation of the euro may be one, but
Yeah.
isn't it so that we cannot even speak already of a crisis, because the crisis currently at the end of a certain market development, and we have to look for another system on the whole, which other mechanisms, which other functions and so on. What do you think?
Yeah, thank you very much.
Do you want
I would
to take
like to-
question one?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Then I'm going to have to write down the list of.
Okay.
So, to what it will lead in the end, maybe in the end. But first, on your questions. The first one was about who is going to run the labor market. Well, the government. There is no other institution. I do not say that the government should run the labor market in every detail, but what I think is absolutely necessary that the government gives clear guidelines. Government has to give clear guidelines, and that can be done in different ways. And this is not only true for a currency union. In the currency union, it's absolutely unavoidable. In the currency union, you have to coordinate wage growth. That is why, that's the idea of a currency union, otherwise forget about a currency union. If you have flexible exchange rate, you can do your own thing. You can have higher inflation or lower inflation, and you hope that there will be sort of compensation from the market or whoever runs or determines the exchange. But there is no way out that under these conditions now that we have here, that the government has to intervene. Because what this does is disastrous. Because the high unemployment is putting pressure on wages that are anyway low. As putting pressure on wages low, and this is dysfunctional. This is destabilizing the whole system. And you know why the central banks are doing so crazy things and they're cutting their interest rate to zero? Because we cannot overcome this pressure of the labor market, of high unemployment, on the income expectations of the average people. We don't have debtors, but we also don't have consumers. For the whole world, we need consumers, we need additional demand, but we don't get this demand because the expectation of the people concerning their income is zero or negative. And this cannot be allowed because this kills the system. The system we're living in has a mechanism that says if you're producing 1.5% or 2%, I don't know, in the case of Poland, 3% productivity every year, then this productivity has to come back in the form of income increase, of real income increase with the people, because otherwise the system cannot exist. The system would produce unemployment all the time. And this cannot be guaranteed by the market, because in the market, due to a crazy event like the financial crisis, suddenly the employer side is much stronger than the others. The balance of power dramatically shifts, and this has to be compensated by the government. This is the only way out. And if we don't understand this, and people are guessing around about this riddle all over the place in the world, I can tell you, even my good friends, Joe Stiglitz or so, they're not jumping to that point. Why? Because deep in their mind, they think the labor market is a market too. It is nevertheless a market. Or Paul Krugman, look at him, he's going around this point from one side to the other, but he never finds a solution because deep down inside he believes that the labor market must be a market. No, it's not a market. It doesn't work like a market. That is why we need here much stronger, much more integration than anywhere else. The labor market, in my view, is the crucial thing. Fiscal policy, financial markets are important and have to be regulated and so on. All this is important, but the labor market is really the crucial thing. The second question was?
Yeah, so it's easy to understand. Why do they not do this?
Why they don't do that? Yeah, that is it ideology or not? Well, it's always a mixture, but let's not fool ourselves. If everybody or every reasonable person, every journalist or so, would understand the logic of my financial flows that I demonstrate to you, if everybody would understand, it would be very difficult for the politicians to escape that. But it is not communicated, it is not really discussed. Why? Because I think really most people don't understand it. It's also a question of ideological blockades, there's no doubt about it, but many people still do not understand, and we have to work hard to convince more people. And everybody can be convinced. So your last question, so what is the way out?
There is a way out. Well, we are on the end of...
No, there is not necessarily a way out. There is not necessarily a way out, to be absolutely clear. The last big depression in the world economy was never solved intellectually. It disappeared in a war. It disappeared in a war. It was never overcome by intellectual power, so to say, only in small parts of the world, in the United States a little bit, but only due to a very special president, namely Roosevelt at that time. If he would not have been there, it would have been much worse, and we would have had no solution at all. We would not have found a solution. And the fact today...
There's no Roosevelt.
The fact today, first there's no Roosevelt, that's for sure. But the other fact is that politicians, not responsible politicians, but politicians in power can talk the whole day in Germany like Heinrich Brüning, can preach austerity policies in the midst of the deepest crisis. That makes me very, very skeptical that we are able to find a solution. But nevertheless, we have to fight. That's our duty.
My name is Roberto Covas, I'm an economist. If the hard core of this problem is labor cost, and thinking about that, what you answered to this question, I think that we are talking about the finish not of the liberalism, but of the change of the capitalistic way of production.
Yeah.
And quite often we don't like speak that when we are all the time speaking A, but A and Z.
Yeah, the point is, I think it's really, we have reached a crucial point in history. One should be always careful with these words saying something like that. But I think it's true. This shows that it's true. Why is it true? Because up to now, in one way or the other, there was always, so to say, a way that would save us out or get us out of the slump by extraordinary things. Look at the United States. This is absolutely true for the United States. It's dominated by the United States' development, that's for sure. What happened in the last two, after the last two recoveries? After the last two recoveries, the only thing that got the United States back to a normal path of growth was a bubble, a financial bubble. So only due to a financial bubble and the reduction of the savings rate to zero in the United States. That was the only way out. There was no growth of income of the average people in the United States, but they cut their savings rate to zero, or some even below zero. That was the only way that saved the US economy in the last 10 years. But now the savings rate is so low there's not much room of maneuver. They're back to 2%. Savings rate of the American households is back to 2%. So there's not much room of maneuver. So now what they do is they're creating a new bubble. That's what they do in the stock market these days. They're creating a new bubble, but it doesn't work anymore. If that doesn't work anymore, there's no other way to stimulate the economy. And this is what makes Ben Bernanke crazy. He's a very bright guy. He knows a lot of things. And that is driving him crazy. He does whatever he could, but it's not working. Even imagine in the United States, the Federal Reserve is announcing a short-term interest rate of 0 for the next 3 years. 10 years ago, every reasonable person in the United States would have said that's socialism. If the Fed announces a short-term interest rate for the next 3 years, that's planned economy, that's communism. Are you crazy to do that? Yeah. This shows how desperate and how difficult the situation was. And so far it's right. We're at a really crucial point.
And the point is to open this kind of discussion, Because we have to define the structural solution.
Yeah, the structural solution is forget about the labor market as a market. Have the government intervene and have the government to tell the companies to pay 5% wage increase in Germany for the next 20 years. That's the solution. This is dramatical. Huh? Imagine against
there's no space for that.
Hmm?
There is no political space for that.
Not yet. No.
No,
No, sure.
The floor is clear.
Thank you, Stanisław Adamczyk, Warsaw School of Economics. In the last International Monetary Fund report, the Chicago plan I visited, the analyst stated that the reason of the problem is the money based on debt. And he told that the solution of the problem is money created by the state, not being a debt. What do you think about this idea?
Yeah, thank you. My friend Michael Kumhoff has done it. I've discussed it with him several times already. Well, I don't think that that's a crucial point. No, that's the money. This new or old. It's an old idea. Is to so to say to create super monetarism. That is what it does. Monetarism was the idea that we're controlling the volume of money, and then we're controlling the whole economy through a stable inflation rate. That didn't work. Monetarism survived in the United States for 10 years, in Europe for 25 years, but now it's dead. So now comes monetarism back through this kind of idea, namely controlling even more much stricter the money supply or money volume. That doesn't work. Why doesn't it not work? Well, for a simple reason, because the market system needs inflexible prices. See, that's funny. Again, not only on the labor market inflexible prices, but on the money market inflexible prices. That is what the system needs. Yeah, you're surprised, huh? Mm-hmm. Yeah, but that is what it needs. Yeah, sometimes we have to be a bit provocative in the terms that we use. That is why I'm using it like that. Yeah, the interest rate has to be inflexible, not flexible. Flexible interest rate is the worst thing for a market economy that you can imagine. And that is why the only successful model that we have found is to keep the interest rate low and stable, always steered by the central bank, like hell. That is what we do. That is what we have been living in the last 50 years, is inflexible. The most inflexible price is the one on the money market. Why? Because it's directly dominated by the central bank. And if you take Michael Kumhoff's ideas, and I discussed it with him and with many other people in Germany, all these ideas around, then you come to the exactly opposite, namely you control the money supply, but what happens, the interest rate is becoming the most flexible price in the world, and that kills the market economy. Sorry to be so clear. Yeah, but we have to understand, if you allow me to say one word on that, I think it's really important. No, we don't need it. We can.
I will need it.
You will need it. Sorry.
Sorry.
Yeah, sure. No.
The last one.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, let me say one word on that. I really think we have to think freshly about the market economy and the dynamics of the market economy, much more radical than even the more progressive economists did in the past. And this is a crucial part for me. You have three important prices in the market economy. Three: wages, interest rates, exchange rates. For the market economy to function, all have to be inflexible. The most important macroeconomic prices have to be inflexible, not flexible. This is Schumpeterian economics. That means when these prices are inflexible and they are such at a level that they are pro-growth, then you get growth. Then you get growth and income growth out of the system. If you just leave the prices determined on a static market, well, the result will be nothing. You get no growth, no development. That's not growth. So no development, you don't get development. But development is exactly what we need, be it ecological development or other development. Always time it has to be development through investment. That's what we want. Wherever the investment goes is not important. But that is exactly what we want. And for that we need inflexible prices and not flexible.
Anyone else? Okay. With regard to your last comment, I think this is actually what you will find in modern monetary theory. The rate of interest must not be regulated by the market. It must be set by the central bank so as to induce the entrepreneurs to borrow and to make investments.
Exactly.
Okay. Now I have a comment and a question, perhaps two comments and a question. First, I'm not sure I would fully agree that intellectually we were unable to provide an answer to the 2933 crisis. I think Keynesian, Kaleckian economics.
No, politically.
And politically, yes. This is the political aspect of full employment. Yeah. We knew how to do it for political reasons. We declined to write that essay on how to reach full employment. The question relates to your earlier part of the presentation, i.e., don't you think that when the problematic countries, Greece, Spain, Italy, whatever, have problems with generating export surpluses to be able to pay back their debts? And after all, you know, whatever we say, even if Spain was able to produce BMWs instead of Seats or whatever, they wouldn't be able to compete with German cars unless on third market. So what I think, and this is the question, don't you think that one of the important causes for imposing the austerity programs and reducing wages is to make room that those countries pay back their indebtedness?
To make room that they pay back?
Their debts. Okay. So this doesn't help the relation of their debt to GDP, because the GDP of course falls, unemployment falls, but because of the austerity and reduction of spending, they are able to service their debt at least. Okay? So to some extent, I think this is an enforced way of you know, them paying back their debts. And the last issue relates to this to this diagram. You see, unfortunately, there is rather high correlation until the last years. Okay, when you look at peak at unemployment, okay, there is high between.
Yeah, I see that. Yeah.
You see it, okay. If you compare peak to peak, okay, they go down. Okay, and throughs down, down, down. So there is a clear trend line and rather high correlation. So the people that we are fighting with may say, okay, this is too short a series. Okay, and while we all feel this is not the way it should be, because the more you reduce wages, the less there will be demand and the less there will be any chances for recovery. Nevertheless, this correlation is striking, and we need to find an answer. You know, how to deal with this rate of wage share in GDP and unemployment rate. What would be your response?
Yeah, let me start with the last one. Yeah, the correlation is there. The first one is you have cyclical correlation. That's absolutely clear. You have always a reduction of the wage share in the recession, and then you have a reduction of unemployment in the recovery. So this makes gives.
Sorry to interrupt you. This is not Kalecki.
No. This is what makes gives the association looks like an association in the curves. But then you have a reduction. Yeah, you have a reduction all the time. But as I said, what we have to explain better is why was it there, despite our theoretical consideration that say if you cut wages it doesn't work. Well, because as I said, for 20 years, and this is, as I said, dominated by the United States, for the 20 years it was a reduction in the savings rate of private households that, so to say, compensated for the non-existent wage increases. That was the only way the system could survive these 20 years. But now it's over. This had to come to an end, and it has come to an end. But nevertheless, even then, in this case, this should not and could not have happened under normal market conditions, because whatever the reason is, if you have such a correlation, if wages have come down, if there is no idea about anywhere wages being too high, unemployment cannot rise in the neoclassical model. It cannot rise. And if it rises, then the neoclassical model is wrong. So we wait a little bit, we see that we'll go on like that, and then the case is getting stronger by the day. The second point was the intellectual, or that was the first point, but let me start with that. Whether we intellectually understood the Great Depression, yes, a few of us, a few, not me, but a few people understood it. But what I meant by that we never solved it or we never found a solution intellectually, I meant on a broad basis in going, permeating into politics. That was not the case. Only with Roosevelt was a big exception. For all the rest, there was nothing like that. And this is again what we have to do. It does not help if a few people know what is wrong and what's right. But it has to become a movement that has effects on policies. Otherwise, we will end up in chaos, or I don't know what, in Europe.
Nevertheless, until mid-70s or early 70s, we had relatively high employment rates, high growth in Europe as well as in the United States.
Yes.
So, you know, about a quarter of a century of interventionism and sort of Keynesian type policy.
Yeah, but on a scale that went down, so to say. You see, if you look at Germany, Germany only in the last 10 years had no wage increase anymore. In the years before, we always had still declining increases, but we had increases. Now, in the last 10 years, we have come to the point where there's no increase anymore. That is where the United States are now also, for a time, that they have no wage increases. United Kingdom has no wage increase. Japan has falling wages for 20 years. So, if you take that all together, now Southern Europe and France have no wage increase anymore. So if you take it all together, then we really have reached a new quality, so to say, or a new quantity of the same quality, namely of permanent pressure on wages as a stabilizing factor for the economy.
Rising income disparities since mid-70s. This is and they paying back the debt with austerity.
Yeah, the debt. I think it may be in the back of some people's mind that this is the way to pay back debt, but then nevertheless Germany would have to change. You cannot have the debtors in Southern Europe become creditors and Germany remain a creditor. That's impossible. For that, Europe is a too close economy. As I said, we cannot rely on the rest of the world for becoming the debtor. So Germany has nevertheless would have to change. But this is exactly what the people do not understand. I tell you, they don't understand it. If you go to the German parliament and you talk about things like that, you will see everybody looks at you first time, heard no idea, no clue, we are cutting debt everywhere, debt is bad, debt is cut debt. It's like that. It's we don't have, so to say, the intellectual critical mass to shoot down the model of debt as bad. We were not able to do that at this moment of time. And this was the main purpose of this book. This book was very successful, as I said, but still it doesn't reach a majority, not the majority of the politicians, not the majority of the population.
Well, I think it's time we thank Professor Flassbeck for his lecture, and thank you. Yes?
Just to respond to one more, because I saw that.
Okay, sorry, I haven't seen you. Okay, please.
Thank you. It was very interesting. My name is Lukas. I have a question. It's not really a question, it's an observation. In a way, if I understand, and I guess it's difficult to discuss your picture, and obviously, probably Germany needs to evaluate its labor costs. But effectively what this means that in 20 years Europe on average will become much less competitive compared to the rest of the world. Isn't this an argument which basically German politicians are afraid of? That's the first question.
Europe?
The second is my general observation about economists, and this is a problem of physicists instead of their work in finance. And my problem with economists is that somehow I have a feeling like you guys are failing all the time. Yes, I mean we cannot predict the crises, or we cannot reach an agreement on these predictions. I understand it's a science, it's difficult to explain it to politicians, but somehow I would expect that in 21st century this level of knowledge and this level of understanding should be much better defined, and I would expect much greater agreement.
Yeah, but we had a huge, you see, we had a huge retreat from knowledge that we had 60, 70 years ago. There was a point in history where people said, let's abandon this macroeconomic thinking. We don't want macroeconomics anymore. Purely for ideological reasons, not because they could refute it or they could even question it. No, not at all. But they said we don't want macroeconomics anymore because macroeconomics is left and is bad, and that is why it should not be discussed. And that is why they created what they called the necessary condition for science to have micro foundations in economics. Through this strange and ridiculous way in principle, but through this way of saying you have to be science, you have to have an axiom of parallels, so to say, that is undeniable, and that can only be a micro foundation, which means everything is decided by one representative single household in the world, so to say, that is the axiom of economics, on that you base everything, and then the rest follows. Through this method, they have, so to say, abandoned macro. Macro was not allowed anymore. And this is where we have a big retreat. We have not one step back, but 10 steps back. And so we have to go on now on the same way, so to say, where Kalecki and Keynes went already a long time ago. And we have to reinvent some of their things, and we have to adjust it to today's world. But it is absolutely necessary, because there is this ideological fight among economists. And it's really an ideological fight. It's not a fight about the right recognition and the right evidence and things like that. You can, and no normal person in the world would deny that you have these macro relations, that you have to keep them in mind, that I showed to you, the financial flows, the restrictions, that you have logical restrictions. These are excluded in neoclassical economics. And they are on purpose excluded there, because they know if they start acknowledging these things, then they cannot survive intellectually.
Yeah.
So this is, and your first point was?
Well, my first point was that if we follow the program which you laid here,
yeah,
basically on average you can expect that within 25 years
so
will make Europe much less competitive
against the rest of the world. Yeah,
but
you see, competitiveness against the rest of the world, as I said, doesn't work. These countries that have their own currencies, you cannot compete with. They will always depreciate their currency in one way or the other, or they will close their borders. Free trade is not a natural law. So if Europe would do the same as Germany did, as I said, it would be under such harsh criticism, and in the end it would provoke protectionism in the rest of the world. Absolutely necessary. Nobody would accept that Europe does the same what Germany did. As I said, you could not imagine how harsh the criticism of the United States is addressing Germany with its surplus. But up to this moment, they're shying away from taking clear and strong measures. But at a certain point, if Europe would go the same way, they would definitely do it. And this is why we have currencies. You know, if you have a currency that is flexible in principle, then it's giving you the normal protection, so to say, that you need against a country that is going the way Germany went. Only in this unique historical conditions of the currency union, it was possible for Germany to go for 10 years this way and be so successful. That cannot be repeated the next 1,000 years, because no country will be go into the currency union with Germany anymore.
Can I have one short question?
I'm afraid we have the interpreters that we should. Okay.
No.
Very short
Yes.
one. Just I wanted to ask you, what do you think? What will go to happen? Because I'm asking about your Bauchgefühl, about your feeling. Because you are a practitioner and so on, and I'm sure that you have some ideas. What will be the outcome of next years?
Well, realistically, I think what we see will be two scenarios are possible. The one scenario that I'm still fighting for is the scenario where the southern countries, including France, stand up and oppose the German bloc. That is the only way the euro can survive in my opinion. And believe me, I'm talking all around southern Europe, but I require everyone to forge such a coalition against my own country. Sometimes things are like that. And if this is not done, it's not happening, and I have not big hope that it will happen, because if you look at France, I was in Paris last week, I'm not very optimistic. France is trying now exactly the same what Germany did, improve competitiveness, cut wages, but the result will be disaster, it's very clear. So the realistic outcome is that one country after the other in the south is no longer fully functioning as democracy. What are people doing if unemployment is 25% and is not getting better? If youth unemployment is 50%, is not getting better? If there are no positive perspective for growth, development, for anything, people are going to vote for crazy parties. You see that in Italy already, and you look around. And this can be the end of democracy. It's so serious. It's so serious. These are not established democracies for 500 years, but they're very fragile democracies. So and if this is going to happen, then it will be chaos and it will be disaster in Europe. That is why I'm looking for a third option. That is why in this new study that I've done with the Greek colleague, Kostas Lapavitsas, we said, let's go at least for a European option. Let's give the countries a chance, an option to opt out, an exit option. Give them an option, an orderly exit, for an orderly exit out of the euro. Nobody can say, people who say the euro is irreversible, I think that's crazy. My friend Mario Draghi said something like that, but it's nonsense. Irreversible, nothing is irreversible that human beings have invented. It can all be reinvented or it can be destroyed, and it happens if it doesn't work. So, if it's not irreversible, then give them an option, a reasonable, a rational option to exit. And under orderly conditions, which means that they are protected afterwards and they do not have to leave their currency just to the market and so on. A number of conditions. And Cyprus is the first country to go into that direction because the capital controls are already there. This is the first step that you have to take. Extremely strict capital controls, they are already there. So for Cyprus, it would be a small step to announce to the people, and I've been asked there, I was there, and I told them, if I were you, I would ask my people. I would do a referendum and tell people what are the pros and cons, discuss it openly, and let's see what comes out. And then if people say we want the option, the exit option, we want to take the exit option, then they have to negotiate with Brussels about the conditions, and they want to remain member of the EU. We should not allow that the EU is destroyed by the failure of EMU. This is the crucial thing we said at the beginning. EMU was a step too far, maybe, or a step in a direction that we could not manage as a step, and we were not able, due to our ideological constraints, mainly to manage. But then we should not destroy the EU. The EU is more than just a currency union. This I think is extremely important.
Okay, well, thank you for illuminating lecture. Otherwise, with some of you, we meet next Thursday. Thank you. Tomorrow you have an interview, or two interviews, because Michał wants to have an interview with you, and Jacek Żakowski, who you met. At 11, this is in the Polish Academy of Sciences, part of Staszica.
No, I just asked.
But it's more or less the same topic. Yeah, okay.
Glauben Sie wirklich, dass das Interviewen immer mehr Verbindung mit diesen Politikern? Glauben Sie, dass es eine intellektuelle Schwelle ist, oder eine Überschreitung, oder wissen die, dass es nicht geht? Da ist sowieso. Wenn das nicht wissen, der bemüht sich nicht, der könnte eben
Okay, rozumiem.
Ich verfolge die ganze Zeit. Sie sind wirklich da, ich wusste nicht, ob Sie da eins geht immer das Urlaub. Das ist so eigenartig.
Czy od razu? Dojdziesz do nas, tak? Tak, znajdziesz nas, tak? Chyba jest na moje nazwisko w ogóle.
No wreszcie kogoś rozsądnego tam co zapraszałeś.
Wie pan, no, Kregel też było bardzo...
Proszę?
Ja na Kreglu nie byłem, ale bardzo ciekawe rzeczy mówiłem.
Right.
Wait.